Welcome to the Mike Gun Much podcast. I am your host, Mike Bierman, and after a week off, our boy Max is back. Max, what's going on?
I'm glad I got the call. I know you guys were slandering my name.
No, how dare you? What did we say?
Well, you said I was out of a job, and Matt would be the full-time new open guy, maybe producer. Which you know what, I wouldn't even begrudge you because he was a pretty damn good.
He's a pretty charismatic guy.
Yeah.
Go back and listen to the last episode of Bishop Briggs, and you can hear our good friend Matt Unsworth. And also, Bishop Briggs, who was great.
Bishop Briggs was great, and you know what? I was thinking about her, and I was thinking about Alicia Cara. You know, I think we're onto something. We have with Alicia Cara, we caught her just before things really started to explode for her.
Yeah.
And do you think she'd recognize you, Alicia Cara, if she saw you again?
Oh, good question. I don't know. My hair's a lot longer now, Max.
Another actually person an early interview was Vance Joy, who I just played with on the weekend.
Did he recognize you?
No, because I wasn't there for that
Shane was with
interview.
me in the room.
Yeah.
Right, yes.
And the Lumineers. We also played with the Lumineers this weekend.
Oh, how was that?
It was good. It was out in Calgary and Edmonton.
Did you interact? Because they're good guys.
Yeah, no, you know what? I did not get a chance to talk to either of those guys.
Yeah.
But Vance Joy, man, that dude, he's just like so tall and handsome. He's the taller, handsome Australian version of me. The Australian accent and the English accent, they're just cheap gimmicks, you know? on Canadian chicks.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. You know, he tells this story about the song Red Eye. He's like, this song's about, it's about flying across the country on a red eye to meet the woman you love.
Is that Vance Joy? I can't tell right now. That's hilarious. So he tells that story. Everybody's hearts melt.
Yeah. But God bless that guy.
Did you interact with him at all?
Nope, I did not. Yeah, people think that
everyone hangs
it's
out.
Just a big hangout, and the reality is, if you know somebody going into the festival, you'll make an effort to see them. Like we know the Winter Sleep guys, and we hung out with them a bit. But everybody else sort of just like sticks in their trailer or shows up an hour before they play. But what else is going on? We just played a Frosh Week show at Laurier.
Good times.
It was great times. So the backstory with Laurier and the city of Waterloo is that my girlfriend Lauren went to school there all through undergrad. So I spent a lot of time there. So it was pretty nostalgic for me going back there.
Really?
Yeah, I walked by her old house and took a photo and sent it to her.
Aww.
All the places we used to go, like this coffee shop and some
Phil's.
restaurants. Yeah, Phil's. And it was great.
How was the show?
The show was our best show there we've ever had.
Really?
Yeah.
Were they going nuts?
They were going nuts. I also, actually, okay, so for our listeners, we had this one bit in Pullin' Punches where Anthony does a piano solo. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of like become a staple part of our set. But we like to try to keep it fresh with sort of like the bit leading into the piano solo, because we used to do this thing where I'd say that Tony wanted to join an Elton John cover band, and then he'd quote all these Elton John songs, and then we moved that to a Billy Joel cover band, and he'd quote these Billy Joel songs. And when we were in England, I did something which I often do, is I call you, Mike, and I ask for advice. And I say, Mike, how do I set up this bit? Because you're a wordsmith, and you're good at setting up a story. You're a great storyteller. So together on the phone, I was in Shoreditch in London, England, and you were, I think, at work probably.
Oh, yeah. Like a sucker.
Yeah. And we worked at this whole bit about Genesis and Peter Gabriel and Phil Collins. And you walked me through it, and I did it at the show. And it killed.
It went well.
And so basically the bit was, we went on a Genesis walking tour around London, and we were seeing the place where they first recorded their album and their first gig and where they had their first drink.
Yeah.
And so I was like, who wants to hear a Genesis song? And then we played That's All. Or Tony played do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do-do-do,
yep.
do-do-do-do. I was like, Tony, and then the next song we played was a Phil Collins song. Which one was it?
In the Air Tonight.
Oh, In the Air Tonight. Basically, I needed to get to the setup for the whole band launching into Sledgehammer, which is Peter Gabriel's song.
Yeah.
So how do we do it again?
Essentially, you want to, it was kind of like, there's this raging debate as to who's the better Genesis frontman, Phil Collins or Peter Gabriel. And if you were to ask Peter Gabriel who the real genius is,
it's Peter Gabriel.
He'll tell you it's Peter Gabriel.
Yeah.
Did that go over well with the crowd?
It killed. It was awesome. And the thing about the magic of a show is you can kind of create just that. You can create magic. And so people, even our management, Meg, who's one of our managers, she comes up to us after the show and she goes, I didn't know you guys went on a Genesis walking tour. Why didn't you tell me? I would have loved to go on it. I was like, I was just making it up.
Does one even exist?
No, of course not.
I love
really.
it. Yeah.
So anyway, leading me back to the show, last night at Laurier. I'm giving away all my secrets here, but whatever. So I wanted to think of a funny way to set up the solo. Now, when I went to visit Lauren at Laurier, they had a music department, and I'd try to sneak into the music room sometimes when she was at class and just try to play stuff on the piano and just like work on songs. And sometimes I'd be let in, sometimes I wouldn't be let in. People kind of looked at me suspiciously. Sometimes people weren't paying attention at all. I once tried to call the music department to
set up
like, hey, can I please borrow your room? And they like said no to me. So from there, I made up this story that not only I had met my girlfriend at Laurier, which is true, but also Tony met the love of his life at Laurier as well. And they're actually getting married this week, which is true. But so Tony is marrying Scarlett, but Scarlett never went to Laurier.
No.
So I'm telling this story, and I say, while our girlfriends were at class on campus here, we'd go to the music room, but we'd always get kicked out. This haggard old professor would just give us the boot. But then one day we came across a student in the music program, and I was like, thinking on the spot. I was like, what should I call this student? What should I call this student? I was like, Julian. Jammin' Julian. I was like, we met a student, Jammin' Julian, and you know what he did for us? He got us fake student IDs. and then from then on, we were able to use those music rooms whenever we wanted, and we want to show you what Tony was working on. And then Tony launches into a piano solo.
Hey!
And so, and everyone lost their mind. And the coolest part about it was, I was walking around the campus, as I was saying. I was like collecting memories, sending photos to Lauren. And they have this year an upright piano set up outside of the music department, like in the middle of the campus, like outside.
Okay.
And so just before we were going into the last chorus of Leather Jacket in the encore, I said, hey, we're actually going to play one more song for you. We'll meet you outside by the upright piano. We're going to do this for Jammin' Julian. And we'll see you out there in 3 minutes after we finish this song. And so we played the song, and then we ran out to the piano. And by then, the whole concert, there was like 1,000 people there, had basically went to the piano. And
they ran out of the venue as well.
They ran out of the venue.
Oh my God!
We went around
awesome.
the back door, and then we did Dancing in the Dark, and it was awesome.
Were people? Was any of that filmed?
There's film like camera phones and stuff like that.
That's amazing. Did you stand on the piano while Tony played it?
Tim played us tambo, Mike played guitar, Tony played piano. I stood on the piano bench, like next to Tony's butt. Nick has strep throat, so he went to the hotel.
Check baseball scores.
Yeah. He was tweeting some stuff. And it was great. It was a real moment.
Oh, my God. That sounds like an amazing moment.
Yeah.
And I love that the whole venue just ran out.
Oh, yeah. It was pretty spectacular. Like, because we went around another way, and then we were just kind of approaching this area where the piano was, and you couldn't see the piano. It was just like a mob of people. Actually, somebody tweeted, overheard by campus security, there's somewhere between 60 and 800 students running at us right now. There's only 12 of us. We need backup. It was good. It worked out. It was really cool. I just wish there was like props like that at every venue we played.
So when you see this piano outside the venue, when do you decide you're going to do this at the end of the show?
I called Tony like at around 6. He was at dinner, and because I was just kind of walking around by myself. I said, Tony, I got this idea. Piano's a little out of tune, but can you go check it out to make sure it's like good enough? And then I sent him the location on my Google Maps phone, and he went over, he tested it out. He's like, this will do the trick. And I said, all right, guys. And I think in the early days, the band might not trust me as much, or just because maybe a little more insecure about it, or we'd have some sort of philosophical debate. But I've gotten to the point where the band just lets me run with these ideas. And about 94% of the time, they work out great. And about 6% of the time, they're train wrecks. But
that's a pretty good batting average.
Yeah, everyone's willing to live with the percentage. Actually, another thing that happened was I put out a call on Twitter saying, anybody from Laurier know how to play private school? And send us a video of you playing private school. And we got 4 or 5 submissions. And I picked one. I actually happened to run into him on the street before the show. he recognized me. And he's like, oh, I sent you a video. I was like, okay, well, keep your ear out during the show. And we called him up, Mitch, and he nailed it. It was awesome.
Really?
Yeah, it was really
oh,
cool.
Man, that's
yeah.
sweet.
Yeah, and he plays in a campus band, too. So he was like, yeah, very excited about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hero for a night, that guy.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. On the show today, Max, we have Ben Mulroney, host of Your Morning, etalk.
The man who I once said has a small butt.
On this very podcast.
On this very podcast.
Yeah, I mean, son of a former prime minister, very successful in his own right.
Yeah.
You sat in for this interview. You set this interview up.
Yeah, I was really excited to talk to Mr. Mulroney. There's not many people who've, lived the life he has. But yeah, it was really interesting to hear him talk about his childhood. The one thing that I found was really interesting was the reason why he went to Duke. That was one of my favorite answers, and we'll let you listen.
That's a good tease.
Yeah.
And also, he tells a great story about getting in a bar fight with Justin Trudeau.
That's right.
Our prime minister.
Or not against Justin Trudeau, but as an ally. As an ally of Justin Trudeau.
I liked it better when we teased that maybe he potentially fought Justin Trudeau. Yeah, everybody would have been fast-forwarding to that. All right, you want to get to Ben Mulroney?
Let's do it.
All right.
Montreal car rides home, sitting in.
Oh, that was me yesterday. That was me.
You got wasted at the birthday party.
I went out the night before with my brother-in-law and my two brothers-in-law, and so we went to a restaurant called Jatoba.
Okay.
You been there? It's a sushi place.
Okay.
Right by Place Phillips.
Okay.
Fantastic place. Really, really good.
Oh, cool.
But they just kept sending drinks over.
Oh, you're like, yeah. We occasionally get that with the band, with the guys just like handing you.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I play in the Arkells.
I know.
Yeah. And then it's hard to say no. All right, I guess I get it.
Yeah.
Do you feel obligated to drink it because it's been sent over?
Yeah, and shots too.
Yeah.
Do you ever do like the 2-sip and leave it?
Occasionally, or
Yeah.
I'll hand them to like our friend Dan Hamilton.
Yeah, well, my dad hasn't had a drink since he was in his like early 30s. But when he would go campaigning or go around the world, like the worst was when they'd go to Ireland. And they'd be going through towns, and the pub owners would come out with these giant glasses of beer, and my dad would go, "Oh, thank you very much. My wife would love this." And my pregnant mothers there, "Okay, I'll take a little sip." And he just get this. He stopped smoking. He stopped drinking. He says he doesn't miss booze at all. Mm-hmm. He still misses smoking every single day of his life.
Wow.
But he doesn't like being around alcohol. Like he doesn't. When we go to restaurants and stuff, he'd make sure they take the wine glasses away because he doesn't want anyone accidentally putting wine in front of him.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Just because he just doesn't.
He probably self-diagnosed as alcoholic a long time ago, but sort of came to a realization where he said, I can't be all these things.
Yeah.
I can't do all these things that I need to do in life, and so he just gave up cold turkey one day.
It was taking away his ability to accomplish things.
He said, I'm either going to be a really great mid-range partner at my law firm in Montreal, and that's all I will be, or I get to be prime minister.
Your dad's family came from a small town.
Baie-Comeau.
Yeah, working class as well.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. It's on the north shore of the St. Lawrence River, and it was a paper mill town. Was it a paper mill town? Yeah, I think it's a paper mill. And in order to actually fill the paper mill and the industry there, they actually paid people to move up there. So they were called pioneers. Wow. So there's a park in Baie-Comeau called Le Parc des Pionniers, and there's the names of all the people there who sort of helped build the town. And my grandfather, Ben Mulroney, is one of those guys.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, did your father talk to you a lot about his upbringing?
Sure. Oh no,
as
yeah.
you were coming up?
No, he was a staunch Irish Catholic family and a lot of kids.
Yeah.
That's why. So I named my son Brian because he had a son named Ben. So we're sort of. It turns out that's what we ended up doing, alternating. But my other son's name is John, and the reason I named him John was because that's my dad's first brother who was born and died on the same day, and there's no record of anything. We don't even know where he was buried. And so when I found out about that, I was like, okay, I'm going to name my other son John because it's sort of going to be a living testament to this boy that nobody knew. But that was sort of par for the course back then. But I think a lot of kids running around a really small house, and my grandfather passed away when he was, I think he was 50. Mm-hmm. And so my dad, it was his responsibility as the eldest son to take care of everybody. And that's what he did. He moved at one point, he moved the whole family to Montreal. and took care of, put people through school, took care of my mom, took care of everybody.
Right, and those small town values and sort of the idea of taking care of your brood and everybody, that do you think that those were passed on and that something was instilled?
I think so. I mean, we always refer to what we call Fortress Mulroney, which is like everybody in our family is in a metaphorical fortress, and we've got a moat around it, and it's our job to take care of everybody on the inside. And if anybody wants to come in, we gotta vet them. Gotta make sure we bring the drawbridge down. But look, there's some fun stuff too. If you don't eat fast, you don't eat. That's one that I learned. My wife tries to get me to slow down when I eat, but I learned it from my dad. The one thing that I think he and my mom taught me was, because he grew up in a tiny little house. I grew up in 24 Sussex, but they always told us that you are as special as they come. We think that you are perfect. We think that you're smart. We're going to help you in any way that we can. But that's all we can. We can do that from within this house. The moment you step out the door, you're not special to anybody. Like everybody's special to someone, but once you step out of this house, you have to prove yourself to all those other people. And they said, one of the reasons we want to help you is because you're probably going to have to prove yourself a little more because you're coming with a lot of baggage. And so that's how I try to live my life. That's how I've tried to grow up, and that's what I'm trying to instill in my kids, which is I'm going to help you in any way I can. But once you get out the door, once you walk through the door that I've held open for you, you're going to have to keep it open because other people are going to constantly be coming trying to close it down. So I think that when you're born to a certain amount of privilege, I think to me, that's the best way of doing things. I'm not denying my reality, but I'm also, I'm not going to let anybody else tell me that everything has been easy, because I have worked very hard. And I appreciate hard work, and I think that's the only way it's the only way to get a person of privilege to appreciate hard work.
And maybe the assumption, even the way you said that, is that like people think maybe there's been an easy road for you because of the situation that you've.
Well, listen, there's certain things that I have not had to worry about that others have to worry about. Absolutely, but show me show me a way where that can't happen in my life. I mean, my dad was prime minister. He worked his way up, and he became prime minister, and because of that, a whole lot of doors were open. Now, what would anyone think of my father if he decided to just keep all those doors closed?
Yeah. Like, good luck, kid.
How do you do that? How do you provide for your family and give them everything that everybody always wants to give their family, but not give them the leg up? That doesn't work.
I read a Judd Apatow quote where he's like, "I'm not going to not let my kids fly first class to punish them or to teach them some sort of you mentioned growing up the son of a prime minister. You're about 8 when your father became prime minister.
The whole thing started when I was about 6.
Okay.
So I was born in 76. I think it's 6. You're making me doubt it now.
Well, you're pretty young at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, were you able to contextualize it?
Sure. The first time my dad ran was the year I was born. The first time he ran and lost the Progressive Conservative leadership. But the year he won in 1983, it was the same day it was my sister's 9th birthday.
Okay.
June 11, 1983. And we watched the whole thing on TV. They don't do this anymore. Like these conventions are not done the same way because they have to tabulate all the votes by hand. And so there was a lot of time for brokering. There's a lot of time for one guy to go over and have meetings with another guy and sort of bring him into the fold. And it happened at the Ottawa the hockey arena that they had, and apparently it smelled bad, and it was sweaty, and it was bad lighting, it was crowded, and it was like what these conventions used to be all about. And we watched it. My sister and I remember watched the whole thing. I understood the concept of the ballot system and starting from behind and eventually building your team. So I remember very early. I was part of that pretty early. I didn't know that it meant that we were going to leave Montreal forever.
Right.
I had no idea that it meant we had to move to Ottawa. That was something I wish they had run by me.
Yeah, was that difficult? I mean,
it wasn't difficult.
You're pretty young, so it's like you established a ton of roots.
No, it's just that as you get older and you see that Montreal's got a hockey team, and there was just more. In Montreal, when we go visit, slightly more exciting.
I think you're being diplomatic right now, saying that Montreal is more fun than Ottawa.
Ottawa, to be fair, is more interesting today when I go back than it was. And it's not that I'm a parent. Everyone says, "Oh, it's the best place in the country to raise kids." That's not why I think it's better. I think there's better restaurants there now. I think there's a slightly better nightlife. I think there's better hotels. I think the city is prettier. They've invested a lot in infrastructure, so I think except for that sinkhole that they had. Remember that?
I missed that.
Yeah, I missed that. Yeah. We were talking about, I don't know if it was Sash or Malia, whoever got busted at Lollapalooza.
Yeah.
When you're growing up, how do you feel about the attention that you're receiving? Do you notice it? Is it not as, it's different back then?
The scope is so different that it's an entirely different beast. I mean, it's the press really didn't come after us. Every now and then they try to insinuate some stuff by saying that like some journalists tried to say that we would stop at a convenience store on the way home and buy overpriced candy. I mean, this was supposed to stick to my dad, but beyond that, no, we were left alone. So you can't really compare the two. I did feel it when we didn't have it anymore. For the first couple of months, the idea of walking down the street and not having protection was a little weird. I did feel a little exposed because the safety blanket was gone.
Sure.
I guess. That quickly goes away. You get used to your new reality. But I do remember feeling that there was this absence of a shadow.
You would have been a teenager.
Yeah, I was a teenager. Yeah.
What were your peers like with you being the son of Prime Minister? Did you feel different? Did they treat you differently?
Well, I went to a school in Ottawa called le Lycée Claudel. It was a French school run by the French government. So they put these lycées all over the world, wherever they're diplomats, where they had a high concentration of diplomats, so world capitals and things like that. And they established these so that the kids of the diplomats would always be in the French system. And if they left Paris or they left France to go to Washington or to go to London, they could keep their kids in the same school system, and they would always be ready to go to a French university.
Mm.
So I was at school with a lot of kids, with a lot of diplomats' kids. And so I never...
You're all sort of in the same boat.
Everything was fine. I didn't... When you don't have a different point of reference, you don't have a reference that stuff is different, then that's just your reality. I did not know things were different. I didn't notice them until after we left politics. I didn't know that people normally, I remember the first time we were having dinner at my house in Montreal, my parents' new house, and a buddy of mine just showed up at the house and rang the doorbell while we were having dinner. And my parents were like, what's going on? I was like, I looked at him, my friend at the door. My parents were a little miffed. They said, like, why didn't he call ahead? Because that's not what people do. People ring the doorbell, you answer the door, and they come into your house. But back when we were in Ottawa, you couldn't get past that gate unless you called ahead first, and they knew that you were coming. So you don't know things are different until they are.
Right. Did you find that in your upbringing there was like did you get a lot of father-son moments with your dad, even though he had such a high-profile job? Yeah.
I wrote an article when Justin became Prime Minister. I wrote an article for the Globe and Mail about growing up in that place and sort of now looking back as a parent on those moments. I think, my parents weren't around as much as some other parents are, but I felt their presence all the time. And I think that's all you can do as a parent is to, if you're traveling, if you had kids at home, so long as when you're home with them, you're the best version of a dad you can be.
Yeah.
Your kids are going to remember that. All the other stuff that's going to fall by the wayside. I mean, I think we're all programmed to remember the best. And so the times I remember with my dad were like at night, after dinner, we would sit around and we watch the news together in his den. So he'd do a flyby or flyover of all the different channels, and we would watch that as much as we could, and then we'd talk about the news. It was also a way for me to get around my mom's rule that I wasn't allowed watching TV during the week. And so I'd sit with my dad, and I remember that a lot. And then in the wintertime, we'd go up to the Prime Minister's residence in the country, and there was a lake, which we turned into a skating rink. And so we'd skate a lot and play hockey together. And it's those moments. Look, I know my dad traveled a lot, but I don't, in my memory, it doesn't feel like he did.
Mm-hmm. So you do all this, you grow up, and then you end up at Duke.
Yeah.
How do you end up at Duke?
I knew I was always going to come home. So I thought, let's go away for a few years. I also knew I wanted to study history and political science. And I had no desire to go to a Canadian university where a disgruntled wannabe politician who always wanted to score points against my father could take it out on me.
Fascinating.
I had no desire to sit in a history class and have some guy know that Brian Mulroney's son is there and he's going to tell me how it is.
Yeah.
So instead I wanted to go somewhere. I wanted to just get away and just be a student for a while. And ironically, I picked the school that actually had a Canadian Studies department. They had a department that they built in conjunction with McGill University. And so they had, which was really interesting because when I was there, I took a class. It was in 1993. And this was when Bill Clinton and his wife were taking a stab at healthcare reform. And so I was able to study the Canadian healthcare system by way of a comparison with the American system.
Yeah.
And it was great. It was quite surprising. Another thing that was interesting is because they had a Canadian Studies department. If you had like Duke cable, like if you lived in the dorms and you had the Duke cable system, I had CBC Montreal in my room, so I could watch all my local news
as part of this curriculum.
Yeah, for some reason they got it. They got a right to carry it. But I was able to watch all the hockey games. I was able to watch the all the referendum coverage in 1995.
With Jean Chrétien, I remember that. Yeah.
And I was sitting in a bar alone in 1995 watching it because I asked them to change it on the campus bar, and nobody, like I couldn't get anybody to appreciate how big of a deal this was.
There's big shit going on in Canada.
I remember I grew up in Hamilton, and they sent buses, and I got on a bus with my friend. I was way too young to get on a bus. And I remember like going out there, and it was
where?
To Ottawa. They had a huge
the Ottawa
rallies.
and Montreal. They had huge, like 150,000 people showing up.
Yep.
To show their support for United Canada. Huge,
totally.
huge.
All like
amount.
stay.
Yeah, a lot of people said this was the tide had turned because of this, and of course then the yes side claimed that a whole bunch of laws were violated because of this, because like Air Canada was giving discounts for people to fly from around the country to go in there. And, yeah, so that's sort of. I mean, is that third party advertising? I don't know.
It's an interesting question.
Yeah.
So you're going to Duke, and what's your plan for your career at this point?
No plan.
just learning.
How many people have
hanging
plans?
out?
Yeah, I mean, I was a history poli-sci major. I was a liberal arts guy.
Yeah.
By definition, there is no plan when you're in liberal arts. I used to say that I majored in dinner conversation because I learned just enough about enough subjects to make myself interesting for 3 courses.
Yeah.
And no, I think I tried a whole bunch of stuff while I was down there, and I tried my hand at directing a play. I got involved in some student political organizations. I ran for treasurer of my dorm, and I worked in a gold mine during the summer. My dad was on the board of a gold mine. He said, "Hey, do you want to work in a gold mine?" I said, "Yeah, I would love to work in a gold mine."
What does that entail? Like, does it?
Here's what it entails. It entails, in order to get the proper work permit to work in, because it was in Nevada. In order to get the proper work permits and student visa, I had to change my major from history and political science to geology, which meant I then had to sign up for all these friggin' classes. And then I went and I worked in the mine, and it was really interesting. Big open pit mine in Elko, Nevada, and learned all about dewatering and all the policies around the environmental protection. I worked in the explosives department temporarily.
All right.
Temporarily.
Did you just see any dynamite go
Oh,
off?
hell yeah, we blew some shit up. And but then when I got back to school, I realized I got to change my major back, and all the classes I wanted were taken. So I had to spend a semester taking classes I did not want to take. But I made enough money to buy a car because it's high risk work.
Yeah.
So I made enough money to buy a Ford Mustang with 0 bells and whistles, like nothing, no air conditioning, roll down windows, felt seats, a tape player. Like this was, but what the hell? I had a red car. I was happy. I was like 19 and happy as a pig in shit.
Yeah.
Did you make a lot of friends at Duke?
Yeah, I did. Most of the friends that but the group that I really keep in touch with is quite small. And I don't know how. I don't know. I don't think I actually became. I think I spent a lot of time growing up trying to figure out who the heck I was.
Sure.
And I don't think I really figured that out until I moved here. And even that's later on when I moved here. To
Toronto, you mean?
Yeah, I think the person I am now, I recognize myself. I'm confident in who I am. And I think it's only, for me, I made my closest friends sort of really later in life. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that I know who I am. I know what I'm bringing to the table. I know.
And what you want out of
what I
friends.
want out of relationships, yeah. So I've got a really tight-knit small group of friends from Duke, but not that big. I have a lot of acquaintances.
Sure.
But my closest friends are friends that I've made here in Toronto.
You mentioned you directed a play. You were trying things out. When did you start to head towards entertainment?
I think I was always... I tried. I dipped my toe in it a few times.
On the acting side, like.
Yeah, actually, I acted a little bit as a kid. But that was because I was really shy. I was a really, really, really shy kid. I would like cling to my mother's leg when we'd be out in public. So she put me in drama classes as a way of developing a little more confidence. It wasn't to act or anything like that. But I kind of liked it. I did. The very first time I did a play, I actually wasn't even in the play. I was the master of ceremonies for the play. Which is kind of funny because that's
the gig, yeah.
But then I was in a play at the National Arts Centre in Ottawa. It was the first time that the NAC had did a play with, and the majority of the cast was children. And then after I did that, an agent in Ottawa started representing me, and I started doing voiceover work.
This is as a child?
Yeah, as a kid.
Oh, wow, okay.
But not a lot. I mean, there's not a lot of work.
Sure.
I remember I was offered I was up for a gig for a commercial for like, I think it was like some government department was doing some advertising, and I was up for the gig, and a lawyer said that I couldn't do it because it was conflict of interest. So I realized it was more trouble than it was worth. Ottawa's an industry town, and that industry is not entertainment.
Yeah.
So it passed, but then I started working on the backside of entertainment. I worked at the Just for Laughs Comedy Festival 3 summers in a row, doing like flights and transportation for all the stars. I was in charge of the guy. I had to call people when they were late for their gig. Waking up Dennis Leary after a night in Montreal to tell him he's late for his gig. That's not, you don't want to be the guy making that call.
Yeah.
And then I worked. Then when I started in law school, I was like, all right, well, maybe entertainment law could be fun. So I worked for a summer in a law firm in LA, and it's exactly like regular law work. It's regular legal work. Just the names on the contracts are a little more interesting, but it's still contracts, and it's a lot of office work. It wasn't. It didn't tickle my fancy, and then I only really got into it by accident when someone from here called me because they saw me do an interview at a political convention.
Really? So that's sort of the break, and then.
No, the genesis was that. Yeah, I was at my dad's. I was at the Progressive Conservative Policy Convention in Quebec City, and this was back when they were down at very few seats in the House of Commons, and I was going to law school in Quebec City, and he said, look, it'd be really cool. People haven't seen you in public in a long time, and it might be a little shot in the arm, give a little publicity to the party that kind of needs it right now. And I said, all right. So I went, and my father was right. Caused a little bit of a buzz. I was in the newspaper, and I was interviewed by all the news outlets that were covering the convention, and someone from CTV saw me and said, oh, there's a guy who's relatively photogenic and not afraid of the camera, and he can speak fairly well, and that's what we're kind of looking for this new show. And so they offered me a job, which I did as a webcam correspondent for a while until I finished the bar, and then I moved to Toronto. And then I did that until they shuttered the show, and that network eventually became MTV.
Yeah. Did you have any mentors as you came into the industry, sort of figuring it out? That
not mentors per se, but I've learned a lot from a lot of people. Suzanne Boyce and Yvonne Fetson, they were the people running CTV at the time, and they were big picture people. Like they dreamed big, and for the start, they did a lot of big stuff back when big things were still happening in media, old media, traditional media at least. I learned from Jordan Schwartz, who was he was my former executive producer. Morley Nierenberg is my executive producer here. I've been working with him since my very first job in TV. He's become a great friend, but also someone I've learned a lot from. And I've learned a lot from people who aren't necessarily in TV. I mean, my father gave me the best advice. He said, you're about to get paid to get a PhD in television, so keep your eyes and your ears open all the time. And so I've approached everything in TV as a learning experience. Mm-hmm. I didn't go to school for it. Whenever I give speeches to kids I always get asked, how do I do what you did? And I was like, well, just don't follow my path, because it was more about circumstance than anything else. Certainly the last name helped, but even more than that was the time that I came up. I came up at the birth and the dawn of digital cable, when we went from 30 channels to 300, and all of a sudden every network was scrambling to create content and to find people to create that content. That's not the case anymore. And if I wanted to get into TV today with the name Mulroney, even with the experience, you'd need the experience, or you'd need to have gone to school for it. So I always tell kids, like, go to school for it. Now it's a little bit different. Now it's like, put yourself out there online, create an identity, create your brand. But yeah, it was a really interesting circumstance, and had it not happened. I mean, last week I was in a Shoppers Drug Mart, and this guy stopped me, and he said, I see you everywhere, Ben. You're doing great. But I remember 15 years ago when you started in TV, and you were doing Talk TV and Canada AM, and I told your dad, I bumped into your father, and I said, your son is really everywhere, and he's doing great. And your father said to me, he's like, well, Ben hasn't decided whether this is what he's going to do with his life, which I think my dad was really saying for himself more than anything else.
That's funny.
But it's true. I was going to do it until it dried up, and then I was going to find something else to do. But that was 15 years ago, so I never really had a big plan. It was just sort of get as good as I can at it, to do it as long as I can.
Yeah. With such a high-profile job, that can come with criticism. Those people are watching. How do you deal with criticism? How do you contextualize that?
The only people that really matter in my equation are my parents, my friends, my family, my friends, and the people above me at work, or the people I work with. And if the people I work with are happy, and my friends and family are giving it to me straight and telling me that I'm doing a good job, that's all I care about. I mean, I honestly don't care about anything else. And to worry about those other people would be time consuming. I don't have time to worry about it. I need to care that my bosses care, because if they are happy, then they will keep me on TV and I can keep feeding my family. And like I said, my family is never going to, they're never going to blow sunshine up my butt, ever. They're always going to tell me what they think is the truth. So if I'm getting the honest truth from them and it's positive, then I know I'm doing a good job.
Your life has seemed very charmed, just talking about it and listening to it. When you've had like a life such as yours, what anxieties do you have? Do you have peers that you look at and go, I want to shoot for that? Or do you go, how come I'm not excelling there? Or I'm doing pretty good here. Do you have anxieties, and what are those?
The anxiety, I had anxiety for a while here, because I don't do a whole lot of comparing, but you can't help but look at the media landscape all over the world. And it's very easy as Canadians to look to the Americans. And there is just so much money behind television down there that they can throw a million things against the wall in the hopes that one of them sticks. And they will then make all their money back on that one thing. In Canada, it works a little differently. It's a lot differently. We just don't have that money. And so whatever they throw against the wall, they want to make sure it's going to stick. And so trying new things on TV in Canada is a slow process. And you can sometimes feel like things are passing you by. And there was a period where I was concerned, where, like, am I going to get a chance to do other things? I've tried to produce things, bring ideas to the network. And there have been times where people would listen and times when people wouldn't listen. And we're currently in a time where I do feel like I'm working with people who want to hear my ideas, who want me to succeed, who want me to help them succeed. And that's, I think, really important. Like, I want to be viewed as someone who is contributing and who has value to add. And I definitely feel that way now. But the flip side is there have been times in the past where I haven't. And you can get anxious, you can get worried. Like, how am I gonna take control of this situation? How can I be the master of this domain? Instead of just a passenger on a ship that I don't know where we're going. Because at any point, someone could call you up and say, new direction, you're not part of it. And so you want to make sure that you're protected. And so that's where the anxiety comes from, is a feeling that you might not have the control that you need. And obviously, the older you get in life, the more you have at stake, because you've got people who depend on you.
Yeah, there's been some articles written about kids that go to Ivy League schools, or that are the sons of or daughters of high-level business people, and just the anxiety that these kids have living in, just because expectations are really high.
No, I've never felt those expectations at all. I mean, look at my dad's from the political world. I've been doing entertainment television for the better part of 2 decades now. Those things are pretty far apart, and so I've never felt anyone. I've had a couple of people try to come to me and say, in interviews, they'll say, so, are you ever going to do something a little more serious with your life? And so
Really?
I've had interviewers say that, and I look at them and say, I reject the premise of your question.
Yeah, that's loaded as well.
I said, I absolutely reject the premise of your question. I said the fact that, and I sort of tell them how proud I am of etalk and the work that we've done in helping promote Canadian culture in a way that has never been done before. I mean, to get 750,000 people Monday through Friday tune in to hear stories about, yes, there's Beyonce, but the reason I think Beyonce is there is to put Headley on par with Beyonce. So in the eyes of the viewer, they don't know that they're being spoon-fed Canadian culture, and they don't know that they're being told that the accomplishment of one is equal to the accomplishment of the other. And in our way, we're helping build Canadians, the star system, and therefore Canadian culture. So if you want to say that's not important, okay, that's fair, but I reject it. So without all that to say is I think I've been doing something different than my father, but from my parents, I have never felt any pressure. And I've never put pressure on myself to live up to anything that my father ever accomplished. I mean, he's one of, where are we at, 22 prime ministers now? Is Justin 22nd? It's my dad, and then Kim
Campbell.
Kim Campbell.
That was short.
Yeah, but it still counts.
It counts. It
19. And then Chrétien was 20. Then Paul Martin, 21. Harper, 22. 23. So he's 23. He's the Jordan.
He's Jordan.
He's LeBron. And so there's a small number of those guys. To try to compare what I'm doing to someone who's in a group of 23 is insane.
No, I didn't mean compare it to having to be a prime minister. Just this idea that you have, in whatever you choose to do, excelling is important. But I think that's an important thing to instill in everybody. Pick one thing that you love and make sure that you're good at it. If you're good at something you love, you're going to be happy. I mean, that equation has to balance out, right? So I've never felt any pressure. The pressure is pressure I'm putting on myself. I want to provide for my kids. I want to make sure that tomorrow is better than today. The older the kids get, the more I want to provide for them, and the more I want them to have a future. I want them to be able to have a future possibility the way I did. That's pressure. But I think that also drives me. I mean, that gets me out of bed in the morning when I don't want to get out of bed.
Yeah. Do your kids watch you on TV?
Yeah, it's not really their cup of tea.
Sure.
They're sort of into.
But they're aware of what you do.
Sure. Well, at one point, one of my sons said I was famous, and I didn't know that he knew what fame was. And I always say I'm not famous. I've talked to famous people. I'm next to the famous person, but the spotlight's rarely on me. If I'm in the spotlight, it's because it's spillover from where it actually is, and I'm fine with that. I didn't get into this. I got into this for a job. I didn't get into this to be famous. I don't need that. But he brought it up, and I said, well, what does that mean, famous? And he goes, it's when you're on TV and people recognize you. I was like, that's a nutshell. That's it in a nutshell.
They know your name. You're famous.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned writing an article about Justin Trudeau. What's your relationship like with him?
Very friendly. We met in a bar in Montreal years ago.
Just two single guys.
Yeah, we met in a bar.
Sons of Prime Minister.
And we met right before his father got sick, and then we spent some time together while his father was sick, because he moved back from Vancouver, and I was in Montreal at the time. And then when I started in TV, we took our show to Vancouver, where he was back being a student, and I interviewed him at the Pacific National Exhibition. We did a whole series of shows from there, and I'm guessing the Peony isn't on now, but it's almost on now. It's like a Labor Day, right? So we're almost at the 15th anniversary of my very first interview with him.
Wow.
And then we went out that night and we got into a bar fight.
With each other?
No.
This is outrageous. Okay, so
this is an actual true story, and it's and I've told it before, and he knows it, and it's been written about, so I'm not speaking out of turn. We went to a bar. It was him, me, and Seamus O'Regan, formerly of Canada AM, and my friend, he's now in Justin's government. In fact, I introduced them. And so the three of us went out to a bar, and I was sitting having a drink, I think talking, probably chatting up some lovely ladies, and Justin and Seamus were, there's some music being played, I think it was like Great Big Sea or something like that. And so these two are like jumping up and down.
Seamus is from Newfoundland.
Yes, exactly. So I think the spirit of the island compelled him to dance like a fool on the dance floor, and they were jumping and like banging into each other, and this did not interest me at all. But then these guys walked in, and they looked like they were fresh from the gym. They were wearing really tight, like Armani exchange clothing, and they look like they spent a little too much time at the gym. And Seamus accidentally bumped into one of the guys and spilt his beer a bit. And I didn't like the look of this, and I certainly didn't like the look of it when the guy said, "Oh, it's fine," but then they started talking to each other about something, and I just didn't like what was going on here. And then when Seamus got close again, this guy came out of nowhere and like body slammed him, and Seamus's beer went everywhere. And then this guy sort of parroted back Seamus's apology, and Justin didn't like this. Now Justin had worked as a bouncer and I think had some training in the martial arts, and so he sort of stepped in to, I don't know, there's maybe a little bit of posturing or trying to diffuse the situation or at least make these guys walk away. Well, one guy came out of nowhere and clocked Justin in the nose, and he started bleeding everywhere. I ran to the front of the bar and told the manager that this was about to happen, and I was fresh out of law school, so I threatened to sue the guy. I had no idea how I was going to initiate this action or whether I had grounds, but it just came out. That was my contribution to this fight. And then, so he let us out the side way, and these guys chased us out. We got into a cab. The cabbie told us he wouldn't take us because we got into the wrong end of the cab line. Yeah. So I threatened to sue that guy too. That didn't go anywhere either. And then we got into another cab, and off we went. And then I told the story to my producers the next day on the phone. We had our morning meeting, and I guess one of my producers, her brother worked for a newspaper, so she told him. And then he called me, and I was like, "Oh no, this is not good." But he true to his word, he wrote my version of things.
Gotcha.
And that's the way the story ends. Justin Trudeau and I got into a bar fight.
That's great.
It kills at parties, and when I'm emceeing events, people love it. Although I tweak the ending. You got to tweak the ending when you're emceeing an event.
Yeah.
So the ending of the story when I tell it in crowds is when I went to threaten the manager. I said, "You've got it's two sons of prime ministers here. We're about to get our asses kicked. What are you going to do?" And the guy's response is, "Sell tickets or pay admission."
Yeah. So that's great. I guess lastly, Your Morning is this show that's it. So are you off eTalk now?
No, I'll still do it.
Do both.
So this is my eTalk office, and I got a Your Morning office over there. And so when I come in at 4:30, I'll be going there.
4:30.
Yeah.
God damn.
I know. But there's an energy in this building that they doesn't exist in other places.
Sure.
And I think we'll all be coming in tired. By 6 o'clock we'll be ready to go. But then once that show's done, I'll sort of float between there and here, and then maybe around 10 o'clock, make this my home until about 2:30. Do eTalk, be done with eTalk around 2:15, and then still have a few hours to do things that people do, haircuts and appointments and rotating your tires and whatever people do with their time. But I'll be home before my kids get home. I'm reading them Harry Potter right now, so
great books.
Oh yeah. Well, it's book, movie.
That's how I did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got into it after, and then did it like that.
And I haven't seen any movies, so it's virgin territory to me too. And then once we're done, I told them once we finish all the books and all the movies, then we go down to Orlando.
Oh, that's
fun.
fun.
Yeah. But I get to do that stuff, and I want to cook more. I think the fact that I'm doing both of these requires just more structure in my life, and there's been far too many times where it's easy to say, "Hey, can you come in for an interview at this time?" Or something new comes into the schedule and you're supposed to leave at 5, you're not leaving until 7:30. And there's a fluidity to eTalk that I love, but at this point in my life, I need a little more structure. And because I have that structure, I can plan more things, and I'm excited about that.
Good luck with all of them, man.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for your
time.
time.
It's fun. It was a lot of fun.
Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, guys.
These long form kind of conversations.
Awesome. Yeah, me too.
I stretch out a little bit more.
I think so. Well, that's why I don't like junket interviews.
They're tough. I was going to get into that, actually, the minutiae of those junket interviews.
Those are no fun for me. And it's a muscle, right? You've got to train yourself for them. Some people are really good at jumping right in and setting up that having that dynamic. I stopped doing it for so long that I just don't know how to do it anymore. And it takes me the entire interview to develop a rapport.
To warm it up.
I much prefer longer form, yeah.
Who's the best celeb at the junket interviews? Who gives you real shit immediately?
George Clooney.
Oh, yeah.
Because he got into it later. He became famous later in life.
Mm-hmm.
So all of his early failures, he's proud of them. Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, that he's proud of that stuff.
Yeah.
and he knows why you're there. So Tom Cruise is the same thing. Tom
Yeah.
Cruise is super intense and gives you. He knows that if you got 3 minutes with him, he's going to give you the best 3 minutes of your day. But not
He's an
everyone's-
overachiever, that guy. He wants to
Yeah.
be the best at literally
Yeah.
everything he does.
Yeah.
And but meanwhile, that's 2 out of. And the ones who should do it are the ones who are new to the industry, and
Yeah.
they're the worst.
Welcome to the dessert. Shane Cunningham, our pop culture aficionado, is here. Shane got married, and Max, you were not there.
I missed it.
Yeah, thans for nothing, Max.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I did contribute 2 people's worth of money in the envelope. so Lauren went, but we contribute the amount of money that 2 people would give, I think.
No, yeah, it's funny when you going through that process because I always wanted to know what it's like because I always give the money.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, I wonder what it's like when they open it, if they judge you or anything like that.
Do you judge?
Yeah. Like, it's just like that little extra amount you're like, oh, okay. It's funny, like just a $50 amount, even though it's meaningless. You just think about it.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so Mike and I, luckily, we made a deal where we weren't going to give each other anything.
Oh, nice.
Because it counts each other out because Mike's getting married next week now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would assume we'd each give each other a G.
Yeah, of course. Easily.
But yeah, your girlfriend was actually like 2 people were like so into the wedding more than anyone, and it was Lauren, your
Yeah,
girlfriend,
she was.
and JR.
Oh,
JR Diggs.
Oh, that's awesome.
But she came up, she was like bawling after the thing, like
she couldn't
all
stop
night.
crying. She could not stop crying.
Yeah, it made me feel so good. Like because I was super nervous about the speech part.
She loved your speech. She said it was like one of the best speeches she's ever heard.
Yeah, her and JR were like, JR's writing like a play about it. So he was obviously more effective than Lauren, but
Shane, this guy J.R. Diggs used to have a television show on national TV. He's a guy from Hamilton, and he used to put Shane on his show when Shane was a young man.
And we all love JR. JR is still a good friend
He
of
balls
ours.
with us. Yeah.
But he was like the student has now become the teacher.
That's what he said.
And all on my honeymoon, he messaged me this play he's writing about the speech.
Wow.
It was very weird. And he's still on it, and he says he has a date booked for, like, he's putting the cart before the horse a little bit, but he has like a venue and a date booked for this. I guess it's like a one-man show. Like, what do they call that?
Yeah, one-man shows.
Yeah.
So, did anybody video your speech? That was the first thing I asked for. Nobody's gotten back to me.
No, no one videoed
There's
it.
no documentation of it.
None, which I like because then it lives in the ether as the best speech or whatever.
Do you have it
If
written
you have
down?
it, no, I didn't write it down.
You just made it up as you went.
I started planning it, and I get really nervous about public speaking, as a lot of people do, with maybe you guys being the exception to that rule. And I was talking to my fiance at the time about it, and she goes, "Oh, don't do that." She goes, "That's not going to go well the way you structure it." And I never get angry with her. I got super upset. And I was like, "Be positive. I'm not confident." And it was like our only mini fight before the wedding over my speech. Because she, I guess, didn't envision it. Her speech was totally different than mine. So I was just like, I can't talk to her about it anymore. I'm going to have to still go with my gut, even though she didn't think it was going to go well. And then it ended up going super well. So I felt great afterwards. But
So, and what I'll say about the Lauren's reaction, because Lauren was like texting me like drunkenly. We were in Europe at the time, and she was like getting very emotional about the night. And she said, you know, I think this might be true for a lot of the girlfriends of the Champagne Boys, of our friend group, is the only version of Shane they really know is the outrageous version of Shane. And so when you do something crazy, or in the past, again, you haven't been doing many crazy things lately, but like in the past, say 5 or 6 years, if you've done something crazy, they just go, oh, that Shane guy, like he's just like always doing outrageous things. I know he's really funny, but he's kind of just an asshole sometimes.
oh, wow.
Yeah, no. But you know what I mean? No, but and I think the reason why
Wedding invitation rescinded.
Now I'm going to start crying, Lauren.
and Lauren's never specifically said this, but I think there is a version of you, and even maybe to some of our listeners, that just comes off as a wild and crazy guy. Wild and crazy guy, right?
Yeah.
But the reason why I think the Champagne Boys, like, understand your humor and your actions a little differently is because we know where you come from. We've had like more emotional heart to hearts. We know about your family background, just all these things that sort of make you. And that's why, like, the context is always different when you do anything. And the same thing for any of us. So for someone like Lauren and probably a lot of other girls, it's like, oh, I didn't know this side of Shane existed. And we've known this side of Shane to exist since I met you. You know, it's like...
That's why we're friends.
And that's why we're friends. So I don't know. I think it was... I think Lauren loved that, and I think she understands you.
I think the key to a good speech is breaking up and almost crying. People really like that.
When you almost cry?
So I did that like 12 times probably. It really sucks people in, I find.
It's so calculated.
It was natural, but I find sometimes it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Sure.
And if a guy does a super polished speech, kind of like Ben Mulroney probably would do,
yeah.
I don't think it... Because if something's too good and too polished, you're kind of like, that feels a little disingenuous.
Sure.
But if something's kind of scattered, but you know what the person's trying to say and they're being emotional, I find that hits harder.
Of course.
Like emotion just hits really deep. And if you can do both, that's the real sweet spot, I think.
Yeah.
And I kind of fucked up a bunch, but I feel like I kept it more in that sweet spot of being in control and being out of control with emotion. So
yeah,
I thought it went way better than I expected.
Just the anecdotes about your parents and the sacrifices they made for you and how they influenced your life were really, really touching. Good job.
Yeah, but that's what you missed at the wedding.
Oh, sorry. The other thing I was going to say was Lauren said, it's like also Shane like wasn't like a waste case for the whole night. Like he was like the most sober guy there. And it was like, I think everyone, like Lauren was expecting you just to be like the wild and crazy dude, but you were like on the job. Like, is that true?
100%. And I had gone out the night before and tried not to be a waste case there because we have a tradition. Mike's going to go through this on Thursday night where they rent a hotel room, we go out, and we get kind of tipsy before the big night. And it's really hard to not partake and get as wild as the groomsmen and everyone else. But I said I would drink 5 drinks, and I ended up drinking 7 the night before.
Yeah.
And during the wedding, I didn't really start chugging Jack Daniels or whatever till after the speech, which was well after midnight. And I was the least drunk person merely by the fact I started 4 hours later than everyone else. So that would be my advice for Mike, which obviously he's concerned about too. Even going out that night before is kind of a scary thing, but you want to partake in all the traditions.
Your friends.
You want to be a part of it, but you also don't want to be hungover for your wedding.
Yeah. So you last minute decided, because originally you weren't going to do it.
I was like, I don't need to do it. I want to get a good night's sleep. I'll throw on some Star Trek and then like wake up ready to take on my big day. But then I felt like I was really letting down the guys. And I have like...
It's more for everyone else.
Honestly. And as like everybody in the wedding party is like, we got to do it. Come on. What's the deal? What? Like the wife won't let you? And I'm like, no, that's not it. I'm just trying to be like responsible. And then I got shamed. So I will be there. And when I don't show up to my own wedding because I'm in Acapulco shit-faced, that's on you guys.
Acapulco. But like I was telling you, though, the movie Deer Hunter really inspired me to go out and party the night before my wedding. Yeah. Because that has that epic 30... Have you ever seen that movie? It has like a 30-minute scene of just a bunch of men going out drinking before a wedding.
Like young Christopher Walken, good looking.
Nice.
De Niro.
Yeah, kind of looks like Mike, actually, that movie, Christopher Walken. It's weird.
Actually, also, the other thing we're going to talk about, since you are the pop culture aficionado, Shane, is last week on the show, we got last-minute tickets to Kanye from The Nut.
I was super excited about that. Almost worried it wasn't going to come through.
Well, we didn't. Well, because Unzi's only in town for like a night, so it was like, are people like, can we really off to this Kanye show, or does Unzi have to stay here and greet the people? Mm-hmm. And ultimately chose to go to the Kanye show with us.
Well, kind of cornered him. I was like, you got to make the decision now.
You did do that.
Well, actually, I got another version of this story, but continue.
Well, no, let's hear yours.
We want to hear this version.
Well, just that. Like I ran in. I was having a night with our friend Dan because I hadn't seen Dan in a while, and I was walking down Houston, and I ran into Jake and your wife Alex. Jake's.
I heard. Yeah.
Yeah, and then she was telling me, she was like, I was so excited because Shane texted me saying I got tickets to Kanye, and then I was like, I'm going to Kanye, and then he texted me and he said, okay, we don't have tickets for you.
Yeah, that is what happened. I got excited, and I go, we're going to Kanye, baby. And then I'm like, no, Unsworth's in town. I got to go out with the guys.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
either off to a great start.
Either I get 2 more tickets to have 4 in total, or I just give the tickets to Alex. Uh-huh. So I was like, actually, stand by, baby. And then I was like, oh, something happened. Can't go. But we luckily ended up going.
We did.
And I was kind of the only person who had a lukewarm reaction to it, I felt. Like,
Yeah,
am I wrong in saying that?
I thought it was like I'd never seen anything like that. I think a lot of people have seen the photos at this point.
Yep.
That follow
Like,
pop
describe
culture.
it. You're good at describing
Well,
it.
I mean, he had a floating stage. He had a whole lighting ring above the stage. I feel like everything. There was no bad seat in the house because the stage would sort of like go to the one end of the arena and then go to the other end of the arena and then it would float out. So it's like if you're side stage, you have a great spot. If you're in the bowl, where normally you could be really far away from a stage, he's coming to you and he's going to be 15 feet away from you as
Over
the
top of
stage.
you.
Yeah. Well, and then if you're in the pit, he's right over top you where it looked like a rave or a punk show. So like
that part with walking in is awesome.
yes, because you've never seen anything like
Yeah.
it. So it was very Kanye-esque in that it was visionary, and it was very dark and like smoky, and the stage had like these lights on the front that almost made it look like a spaceship as it sort of like, orbed around the arena. And then he performs the shit out of it, and he has a million hits, so it's like you're never not entertained. And just watching the people in the pit became its own fascination.
Well, those are all the Instagram videos where people just like wiling out underneath this movie.
Yeah,
stage.
all of the
Incredible.
show was how the people reacted. And I don't think you could have a show like this unless you're a massive star.
Yeah.
Because that's part of the fascination that a massive star would never have such a minimalist performance aspect.
And you have to be able to just stand there, like no band, like he's tethered to the stage,
Yeah.
and it's just him for 2 hours. But you never get bored.
I got bored a little bit, though. I did.
Well, I was just getting drunk, so I was kind of
Yeah, you were. But I'm definitely in the minority because I find everyone was fascinated for the entire time.
Yeah, Greg was
captivated.
like loving it. Greg, that was his review.
Yeah.
10 out of 10. Sorry.
Well, Greg's like kind of ultimate hipster too. He likes things that are super weird. So I knew Greg would love it because it's not a mainstream thing, and that's kind of right up Greg's alley. For me, I do like doses of that, but I definitely wanted where he kind of lulls you to sleep with how kind of simplistic it is, and then just it explodes to something truly incredible. But it never got there. It just stayed. There was no encore, which was kind of cool too, to just cut the bullshit and just end the show and not have that like fake thing where you walk off stage.
Yep.
Which I guess he couldn't because he's on a platform.
He was tethered to the stage.
I'll be right back.
Jerry, come here, unhook me. Like, just awkward.
Yeah. But yeah, I was overall, I thought it was cool to be there. Glad I did it, but I wasn't blown away.
It's funny how polarizing Kanye is. Like, my girlfriend does not like Kanye. And so when I'm describing the show the next day, I'm like, oh, it was pretty cool. And the stage would, like, tip down toward the mosh pit, and everybody would be reaching at him, and he'd, like, lay down on his belly on the stage and kind of reach out like he was a messiah. And she just goes, oh, I hate that guy. Like, whereas, like, I thought that was kind of a cool moment for his fans, but she sees it as, like, a sort of an indictment of his God complex.
Did he do that partly, because they're saying he's bankrupt, to save cash? Like,
I don't think so.
No, I think that rig was expensive.
Okay.
Yeah. But, he's saving. I mean, they got to set it up in every arena, and they can sell way more seats in the arena now because that stage doesn't take up a quarter of the arena. There's no, like I said, kind of the genius of it is there's no bad seats in the house, and you can sell every seat in the house. It's like it's like a basketball game, but you also sell all the spots on the court.
Yeah, and big thanks. I got to thank the Nut. We're friends again. For
Oh,
hooking
it's
that
true.
up.
What would you give the Kanye show out of 10?
Oh, 7.
Wow, everything's a 7 with you, I find.
Yeah, I like being blown away. I was blown away by a movie called Hell or High Water, I will say that.
Okay. Check it out, Hell or High Water, 10 out of 10. That's it, that's all, that's our episode. Max, you have anything to say?
No, it's been great to be back. I'm glad I didn't get the boot from the show.
Never.
You, Matt Ellsworth. The artwork is provided by Jenna Gregory. You can find her stuff at jennasdoodles.com. Please subscribe to the show on iTunes. Leave us a rating, leave us a comment. Those things make a big help. Follow us on Make Us a Big Help. What the hell? That's what happens when I try to be smooth. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Mike on Much.
The Mike on Much podcast is produced by Max Kerman. I am your host, Mike Vierman. See you next week if we don't die on the weekend.